Hello everybody. Welcome to our Bright Ideas session on evaluating learning effectiveness beyond completion rates. We're excited to have everybody here join us today. Before we officially get started, I want to let you know just a few housekeeping items. Closed captions are available, so feel free to turn them on or off depending on your needs. The Zoom Q&A box is available for any questions that you have throughout today's session. Please keep all questions specific to today's topic, and we'll do our best to answer any of those questions during the session. But if you don't see an answer while we're together, be sure to check the Q&A report that will send in a follow-up email. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted on the Bright Ideas for Corporate and Associations YouTube playlist. You can expect to see that video posted within a week. And in the coming days, we will send all registrants an email with a link to that playlist, a copy of the slide deck, which contains some additional resources, and a copy of the Q&A from today's session. So let's go ahead and get started with today's agenda. We'll start with some quick introductions. From there, we will share an overview of some of the tools that we plan to use today. We'll have a demonstration in Brightspace. And to finish off, we'll take some time to share some resources. We should have some time for a discussion opportunity and then that Q&A time at the end as well. So my name is Victoria Florencio, and I'm a customer success specialist at D2L. Essentially, my role is to help professionals like you make the most of your Brightspace tools. Joining me are my colleagues Heather and Sophie, who will be sharing their expertise by sharing resources in the chat and answering any questions that you have in that Q&A chat. And before we get too far, I do want to align on some quick terms for those who might not be familiar. D2L is the company that we all work for. Brightspace is our product, a learning management system. And depending on where you work, you might call your Brightspace instance something different. But as long as you're joining us today, then it likely refers to Brightspace. And then we also have Brightspace Community, which is D2L's free online website where members can find great teaching and learning information, share best practices, and you can connect with other professionals using Brightspace. And Heather has shared the link to join the community in the chat if you haven't done so already. Let's get into the meat of our session for today. When we talk about learning analytics, completion rates are often, as I mentioned, the first metric organizations look at. Completion data is helpful because it tells us who started training, who finished it, and sometimes how long it took. But completion alone doesn't actually tell us whether the learning made an impact. Completion doesn't tell us whether learners were engaged, if they actually developed new skills, whether they felt that the training was valuable, or arguably most important in many cases, whether they can actually apply what they learned on the job. So while completion tracking is useful, it's only one piece of that bigger picture. So to really understand a learning impact, organizations often look at multiple dimensions of learning effectiveness. On the screen, you can see 4 key areas that are especially valuable to evaluate. We have engagement. Are learners actively participating in your course, or are they just clicking through until the end? We have knowledge or skill development. Are they actually mastering the concepts that are being taught? Learner experience. Did they find the training helpful or even relevant? And then that real-world application or that skill transfer. Can they apply what they've learned to a real-world situation? When we combine insights from across these areas, we can gain a much more complete understanding of how effective a learning program truly is. And you're probably thinking, that's great, but how can we really measure these areas? That brings us into different metrics that matter. We need to combine those quantitative and qualitative data points. For those who are familiar, quantitative data is information that can be measured and expressed with numbers, whereas that qualitative data describes qualities or characteristics that aren't numeric. Quantitative metrics might include things like the course progress, assessment scores, time spent engaging with learning materials, and course completion. But those qualitative insights are just as important. Learner feedback surveys, reflections, discussion participation, and even self-reported confidence in applying new skills. Together, these different types of data help us answer a much more important question. Did this learning experience actually help my learners grow and succeed? So there are several tools in Brightspace that can help an organization capture these deeper insights, but today we'll focus on these three. We have Class Progress, which provides a visual overview of learner engagement, allowing instructors and administrators to track participation across activities. This can help identify which learners might need additional support, which is an example you'll see today. We have surveys, which allow you to collect learner feedback about training experiences, including satisfaction, confidence, and perceived skill development. And then you can use that information to identify opportunities for training improvements. And last but not least, we have our learning outcomes, which allow organizations to track learner progress towards those specific competencies or skills. This can give you a better understanding of skill mastery across your program. Together, these tools help organizations shift from just tracking completion to gathering those meaningful learning insights. So I want to share just these couple learning objectives for today. We'll share how to monitor engagement using class progress, how to collect learner insights using surveys, and how to track skill development with learning outcomes. So all that said, let's jump into Brightspace. So I'm in my workplace wellness course, and I'm going to start by looking at engagement using class progress. If you don't have class progress on your nav bar, you can always access it through the course admin tool. When I first enter this space, I can see a list of my learners, how much content has been completed, login data, an overview of grades, and my survey progress, or learner survey progress. One thing that's really awesome about this space is that it's customizable to what's important to you. I can go into my settings here and reorder or replace the indicators that I see here. So let's say I want to replace my login history. It has my last 30 days. I can click this arrow here and move it up or down, or I can replace it and I can see all of the different indicators that are available. So I like using this because I like being able to change it around depending on what's important to me in that particular stage. But for now, I do want to keep my login history. I'm going to press cancel here. And when we go back to this page, you can see also when I hover over information or different data points, I can get additional information without actually clicking into it. And what's powerful here is being able to see them together is that I'm not just seeing grades, but I'm able to see engagement patterns. So say a learner that hasn't submitted an assessment yet, but has been accessing content and has been logging in, that'll tell a different story than a learner that hasn't logged in at all. So one learner might be struggling and with the content or taking a little bit of time to learn it, whereas another just might be disengaged. And if I click into a specific learner, I can see a detailed view of how they are interacting with the course. I'm initially met with a summary of the progress that Janice here has made within the course, and I can see a nice overview on the right-hand side, or I can jump into a specific tool or metric on the left side here. Let's go into learning outcomes since we're going to go over that later. This is actually one of my favorite spaces in class progress because you can really easily see the level of mastery that learners have with particular outcomes. So I can see that she's already got it for these particular outcomes, or she hasn't been assessed on this one. And I can easily click next here and see how the rest of my learners are progressing with their outcomes specifically. I can see here with Angela that she's doing really well with these communication skills, but she might need more guidance when it comes to those decision-making skills. And if I quickly jump into our content space here, or content within class progress, I can see how much time my learners are spending on different content pieces. So Angela here has spent 12 minutes in the course. Nicole has not spent any time in the course, so she might be brand new to this particular course. Laura has breezed through this course in 5 minutes, completing 11 out of 13 of the topics visited already. And then we have Mark here, who's very passionate about workplace wellness and has spent almost 3 hours on this course. And if I scroll down, I can actually see more information here on the individual content pieces and assessments that are linked within content. So I can see that for this final assignment, the majority of his time in this course has been spent on that. He spent about 2 hours there. As you can imagine, class progress helps us move from that did they finish question to how did they participate and engage with the course. So next, let's look at how we can capture learner feedback using surveys. Once again, I have surveys in my navigation bar here, but if you don't have it there, you can always access through class or course admin. And I do have a course evaluation survey here that I'd like to show you a preview of what it looks like. For this survey, you can see that we start with a Likert scale here, followed by a short answer question so learners can provide additional commentary. It is split into different sections, so you can see about the course here at the top. We have about the instructor, about the learning environment, and as we go down into our overall experience, you can see that we have a couple multiple choice question options here as well. And at the end, we have one final open response question. Some great questions to ask in a survey might be, how confident are you in applying what you've learned? How relevant was this training to your role? And even how can this course be improved? And you also have the ability to make these survey responses anonymous. Oftentimes, this can help the learner feel more comfortable when completing a survey. If you do make these responses anonymous, they will not show up on class progress underneath the students section or the learner section. So I'm going to exit this preview here, and I want to show you some additional things that we can see. So we could edit the survey, which we unfortunately won't have time to get into today, but we also have a space for reports and statistics. Reports are going to be those kind of Excel documents or exports that you can do. But statistics, you can kind of see some great information right here in Brightspace. So I can press this view overall results once I'm in that statistics space. And here I can see how many attempts have been completed for this particular survey and just get an overall idea of how learners have responded to my questions. I can expand their responses and see if they've added anything into those open response. And this kind of feedback really helps us identify those areas for improvement and better understand the learner experience. So I can see, actually, if I go all the way to the bottom, how can this program or classes be improved? We actually had some feedback from a learner here where they said more engagement in the discussion area by the instructor would be very helpful. So those changes are something that that kind of feedback is something that we can't get without having this kind of qualitative data here. And something completion data alone really can't tell us. So looking at the time, I do want to jump into learning outcomes to look at how we can track skill development using that tool. So I know that many of you guys said that You're familiar with surveys already, you're familiar with class progress, but that learning outcomes piece is something that many of you aren't using yet. So we got a sneak peek into learning outcomes within that class progress space. But where they really shine is attaching them with those course materials. So I'm going to go into my content space and I'm using our new content experience here. And on the top left side, you can see that it says 5 out of 5 outcomes aligned to activities. When I click into this, I can see all of my course outcomes that are aligned to this particular course and which units that those outcomes are aligned to. I can also add or remove outcomes right here from the space. So if you were to visit the Learning Outcomes tool from Course Admin, that would take you to this exact same space here. We have lots of different options here. We can import from outcome sets. We can do more actions like unlinking and deleting outcomes. We can create our own outcomes right here in Brightspace. But what I want to show you today is that import from Achievement Standards Network. Really cool thing about this is that we have so many outcomes already here in Brightspace that are aligned. And the one I'm going to use today or borrow from is the American Nurses Association. Shout out to all my nurses out there. Thank you. I know that they likely aren't watching, but if they do watch this. So once I click on my jurisdiction and I can choose our subjects, frameworks, and everything, but we can really get into our learning outcomes, or in this case, they refer to them as standards. We can see our standards here and see some sub-standards, which they refer to as competencies. Within this space, I can select individual ones, or I can select all standards here. So it's really awesome that you can kind of pick and choose which ones are relevant to your course and import those selected outcomes straight from here. This course is not relevant to the American Nurses Association, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel that for today. But I can show you where once you do have those learning outcomes in your course, where you can go to align them to content pieces. So I'm back in my content space. We're going to go to our final assignment 1, the one that Mark spent quite a lot of time on. And for any activities, whether it's an assignment or just a content page, if you want to see what outcomes are aligned, you can do that using the ellipses here and pressing View Outcomes. You can see here that I have 5 outcomes aligned to this piece of content or to this assignment. And I can edit the outcome alignment right here. If you have a lot of outcomes, you can search for them using the search bar. But once you have this information added into your course, you have your learning outcomes added into your course, you have them attached to assessments and content materials. Where learning outcomes get even cooler is being able to see all the quantitative data that comes after assessing them. So we can see that in the mastery view of the gradebook. I'm going to click on grades here. And this is our standard gradebook here. But at the top, we have the option for mastery view. When I scroll down, once it's loaded, I can see at a quick glance that the majority of my learners have mastered many of these outcomes. And once again, I can see that Angela might need that additional support when it comes to those decision-making skills. But Mastery View is the place to go for the overall course data on learning outcomes, as it really allows us to see how learners are progressing against specific skills or competencies over time. So unfortunately, looking at the time, we don't have time to get deeper into each of these tools today, but hopefully you can get a sense of how they shift the focus from course completion to actual skill development. We do also have some resources in the slide deck that go into each of these tools at a deeper level. But before I show you those resources, I just want to review what we discussed today. So what you've seen is how Brightspace allows you to combine those multiple data points like engagement, feedback, and skill development to really get a much more complete picture of that learning effectiveness. And just to summarize a few strategies that you can use to gain deeper insights into the learning impact is you can combine your completion data with the engagement metrics that we discussed today. You can use those surveys, which it sounds like many of you are already, to collect learner feedback and better understand the learner experience. You can align learning outcomes to course activities to help track skill mastery. And then, arguably most important, is you can use these insights to make data-informed improvements to your programs. These strategies help to ensure that your programs are impactful and meaningful to your learners and their development. So while we go through the last few slides, we would love if you could take a few moments to fill out our survey. These results help us to improve our offerings and make sure that we're delivering what you want to see. There's a QR code on the screen that you can scan, or you can use the link that Heather has added to the chat. So thank you in advance for taking the time to do that. And then we've also added a couple links here with information on our product idea exchange or PI process. If you have any feedback regarding Brightspace itself, be sure to check out these resources. We do invite you to join the D2L Champions program. Being a champion gives you the opportunity to receive points for sharing your experience, providing your feedback, and attending webinars just like this one. You can then redeem these points for swag, gift cards, charity options, and additional D2L services. You can find the link for the Champions program in the chat now. And this might have been your first webinar with us, but we do have more to come. So here's a peek at the topics that we've planned through May. The links to register for these upcoming sessions and our session overview page will be in the chat. So check out that overview page for any session descriptions or information on past sessions. And then speaking of webinars, if you haven't heard, our training team hosts 2 monthly sessions for all Brightspace users. The first is a Q&A drop-in session where you can get questions answered in real time. And second is focused on what's new in Brightspace using our monthly release notes. So a link with more information on those sessions will be found in the chat soon.